Hey, welcome back to the food forest. Today's video is going to be about 5 trees and bushes that I probably wouldn't plant if I was restarting my food forest today, so stick around. Okay, so this YouTube channel has a couple goals. First off is the legacy part of the YouTube channel name, and that is basically I want my legacy to be that I helped as many people as possible change the world as much as possible. That's why you see some things, especially in the winter season, like kind of activism style things to get people to question the lives that they lead, the things that we see out in the world, and whether that's the right way that they should be, and maybe we can do things a little bit better. When it's getting dark at like 5 o'clock at night, and over the next month or so, I'm gonna have no light at all. I have to get into some of these other topics in the winter time, and actually I kind of enjoy doing those videos the most. We're going to get into a couple topics, hopefully in the future. A topic on nuclear that I really want to get into. I want to talk about electric vehicles and why they're kind of not the solution. And I'm going to get into some of these in the future, so stick around if you find those videos interesting. Let me know in the comments below. I know that some people are here just for the gardening stuff, but I do really want everyone, if you're interested at all in some of these, tech things, to maybe stick around and come by. I'm an engineer, so I can give a little bit of value in some topics besides just gardening. So I hope you do enjoy that, and I hope it makes me stand out a little more than the average YouTube channel. Why am I talking about all that stuff? Because it kind of segues into the rest of the video. In order for me to tell you 5 plants that I wouldn't plant if I was starting again, you have to kind of understand who I was when I started in the first place and why I planted these plants. Now, when I first started, I was really coming at permaculture and food forests from a prepping standpoint, from a self-sufficiency, resiliency, and definitely an economic standpoint. It was kind of the real, theoretical thought side of me, the engineer side. And if something ever went down and things got really hard, whether it's as full out blown zombie apocalypse, or maybe I just lose my job, something like that, I have that resiliency of, hey, at least we've got a bunch of food growing around us and we can really cut our bills. So that's why I got into it. But what I found is the more that I did it, I really fell in love with the ecosystem building side of it. As you know from watching any of my recent videos, I found that my land came alive as soon as I started planting all of these plants, and especially all the flowers that brought in the insects, and then the insects that brought in the birds, and the birds that brought in the other predators. I found that trophic cascade happened, bringing the wolves back to Yosemite, how it healed the land. I was kind of the wolf on this land, and replanting all of this food, not just for me, but for nature also, caused tremendous and immense changes on my land that really got me addicted to that side of things. Now, when I first got started, the person who I was back then really almost wanted me to kind of show off, and I wanted to be the Sepp Holzer of Ontario, where I was growing lemons. I wanted to create that microclimate, and I wanted to grow really weird things. So I planted a bunch of things that might be on this list where I was kind of pushing the zone a little bit, and that's going to be one of the reasons why I'm choosing not to plant some of these other plants. Now, another reason why I might not plant some of these plants is because I just found that I didn't actually enjoy eating them that much, or they didn't really produce that well in my climate, even when I could actually get them to grow. Now, before I get to the list, I want to talk about the sponsor of today's video, which is Wren.
So Wren is a public benefit company that launched in June 2019 with a mission to unlock the collective action of individuals against the climate crisis that we face. Since then, Wren has sent over $1 million in funding to projects that plant trees, protect the rainforest, and otherwise fight the climate crisis. Wren.co is a website that makes it easy to calculate and offset your carbon footprint. By answering a few questions about your lifestyle, you can find out your carbon footprint and how to reduce it. You can then make a monthly contribution to offset your carbon footprint by funding and supporting carbon reduction projects. Every project on Wren has a monitoring plan to ensure it's having the impact that they promise. From monitoring satellite imagery to measuring tree trunks, they rigorously quantify your actual impact so that you can trust that you're actually making a carbon difference. One of the things that I personally really enjoy about Wren is that they support projects that wouldn't otherwise get funding. It's one thing to give subsidies to solar and electric cars, and that will help the climate. However, some projects are just very difficult to fund, and Ren focuses on supporting projects like this that also have the side benefit of creating equity and balancing out some of the injustices in the world. So if this is something that sounds good to you, consider supporting Ren with a link in the description below.
Okay, now first on this list, and probably the one that I really don't like, is going to be goji berries. Now, this is an interesting one because I planted goji berries as part of my medicinal catalog. I wanted some of the healthiest berries on the planet, and I think goji berries don't really do well in my soil. I've tried to plant them like 10 different times and they've died every single time. I can't keep them alive. Now, I've heard that goji berries like really depleted poor soils, and maybe my soils since I've started have really transitioned past the niche that goji berries really dominate, but I find that I don't really even enjoy the taste of goji berries. Now, goji berries were kind of filling out this support role slash medicinal healthy berry role, and I think if you're gonna do that role, or if I was to do that role again, I would focus more on gumi berries and sea buckthorn. Those are the two that do really, really well. Sea buckthorn is probably healthier than goji berries. It's a nitrogen fixer. They're actually both nitrogen fixers, so they handle that nitrogen fixation role in my bush layer, and that way I can focus in the tree layer to get more highly productive fruits that are nitrogen consumers. And to be honest, my medicinal catalog is so big anyways, with elderberries and currants and sea buckthorn and all the different herbs that I plant. You know, like you can actually make tea out of the sea buckthorn leaves. You got lovage, and you've got valerian, and all the mints and thymes and chamomiles. We've got a huge catalog of really, really medicinal plants, sage and rosemary and thyme, that we don't necessarily need to have every single one of them. And yeah, wolfberries, goji berries, they just weren't really for me. Okay, second on the list is actually going to be one that I clung to for the longest time. I might try it again in the future. I've got, I think, 6 or maybe 8 of them that are still alive, and I'm hoping that they're going to come back next spring, and that is actually figs. So I've actually made videos on figs about how it's so cool that I have them here in the pond, right where there's like a really nice microclimate where the northern wind is blocked. It's in a sunken, sheltered area. It's surrounded by all of this thermal mass of the rock and the water, and it's kind of a perfect full sun exposure. It's a perfect microclimate to push zone on something, and that's where I put my figs because I really wanted them. I got a variety called Chicago Hardy that will actually fruit on first year wood, so that if the whole thing dies but the root lives, then it'll shoot up and fruit right away, and I'll actually get to eat figs. What I found, however, is that they don't always shoot up, and our winters get really, really cold. We'll hit -40 pretty regularly. We'll get these really cold blasts down from Hudson's Bay, and they just cut right through the slice where I am. It's like maybe a 50-mile wide slice, and it just slices right through us. And we'll get these really, really cold bursts of like 5 days where we hit like -40 or lower. -40 is where Celsius and Fahrenheit match, so -40 Fahrenheit is -40 Celsius. That's how cold it gets here in a little short window, and I'm pretty sure that's when all of my zone pushing plants die. Figs are definitely a zone pushing plant. It's like a zone 5, and we hit zone 3 temperatures, even though we're kind of like zone 4. So they're really hard to keep alive. I've kept a couple alive for like 2 or 3 years, and I thought I was in the clear, and then it just straight up died the next year. I've got another couple that seem like they're gonna survive, see if they survive the winter, but it's actually even more complicated than that, because they actually need more sun hours and warmth time in order to actually mature. So I have to kind of dig them out, bring them inside, get them started early, bring them back outside so that they have the time of the season that they need to actually put fruit on and ripen the fruit sufficiently. Because what actually happens in my climate is just when they're putting fruit on and starting to ripen, we get the big hard frost, really cold temps like this, and that's it. Okay, number 3 on this list is going to be persimmons. Now, I actually have a couple persimmons, and I've had them live every single year. I did have one die maybe 4 years ago, but the other ones have actually lived. But what I found is that the persimmons don't really do well here. Everywhere that I've tried to place these things, they just kind of sit there, and who knows, maybe they'll get their leap year next year and they'll really shoot up and do really well. But persimmons I'm kind of pushing zone on. They're really a zone 5 or warmer plant. Now I got a zone 4 variety from a place called Green Barn, and it's a Taylor persimmon. It was actually selectively bred specifically for extremely cold climates, but I just find that they just sit around and they're not doing anything. Maybe in 3 years I'll put a video out about how I love my persimmons. I do love buying persimmons in the store, so I really enjoy eating them. They're one of my favorite fruits, but I do kind of like more of the Asian style persimmon, not the American style. And my family doesn't really like squishy fruits, and that's kind of what you have to wait for. In order to get the astringency out of the American style, you have to really wait until they blet and get really mushy. And I'm okay with that, but if my family's not, and I'm the only one eating it, and they're hard to grow, and I'm pushing zone on them, and I might go 7 years, get a persimmon tree growing, and then a winter takes it out, I probably, if I started again, you know, I might plant one, but I certainly wouldn't plant like the 8 that I planted. Number 4 is on a similar vein to the persimmon, and that's a medlar. Now, medlars are kind of, I actually haven't had one survive, so I can't show you the tree. I can show you a picture of one, and they're just kind of like a small persimmon looking thing, and it's the same idea. They get really, really ripe and squishy. If you want to see a cool video on medlar, check out Park Rose Permaculture. Check out Angela. She did a video on medlars. A lot of people don't know that they exist. That's why I planted them, because I wanted to tell people, hey, have you ever heard of a medlar? I can't get them to grow here. I'm just too cold. And the last plant on my list that I wouldn't plant again is jujubes. Now, jujubes are going to be kind of the same idea that I'm pushing zone on them. They're the Chinese date. Lucy's going crazy, running by. So they're the Chinese date, and I can't get them to grow. I've tried them in a few spots and they just keep dying. Rabbits love these things, so every single time I've gone out and I think I get a little bit of growth on them, the rabbits just take it right out. So I really need something that's rabbit proof here and deer proof here, and jujubes are definitely, from my experience, definitely not. So if you have rabbit pressure, really watch the jujubes. Rabbits are like magnets to them, and they love them. What's going on, crazy girl? What's going on? Why are you so hyped? Is she getting short? I think she's getting short, but I think it's because she's getting a little chubsy because she's putting on her winter weight. That's a good girl. That's a good girl. All right, see you on the next one, guys.